We're going to talk about Alzheimer's and brain health. Now, I remember we've had conversations on this in the past, and you have mentioned that this subject seems to be coming up more frequently, but not in the older generation. It's coming up more frequently as people are, there's younger folks coming in with these challenges.
Yes, it is. Actually, it's starting younger, but we're seeing even more as people age. So we are seeing. I think he has some good statistics on exactly.
I don't know whether they're good, but they're
not
scary.
good. They're scary statistics.
Informative for sure.
And we got the statistics from the Alzheimer's Association, so it's their newest published information on how many people actually are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Now they're looking at the population 65 and over.
Okay. 65 is young.
That's young.
That is who they're looking at. We've seen people younger than 65, but they're looking at 65 and older.
Yeah, and they say that 60 to 70% of all dementias in that age group
considered Alzheimer's.
The bad kind, the Alzheimer's. Okay, in the United States alone, there's about 7.2 million people in that category that have Alzheimer's, and 2/3 of them are women. That's the scary part.
And they say that's 11% of all people over the age of 65 right now has Alzheimer's.
How many?
11%.
Wow.
And actually, that is not counting the other dementias. That is Alzheimer's. So 60 to 70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's, but the ones that are, it is actually 11% of the population over 65.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Now, you mentioned that Alzheimer's is the bad one. Why is that the bad one?
Well, because it's deteriorated to a point of no return, so to speak, and once it gets to that point. Prior to that, you can have what they call MCI, or mild cognitive impairment. Okay, forgot where you put your keys. No big deal. That kind of thing. Those are just... And he says, I don't know where I'll put my keys.
I can't tell you where they are right now.
Yeah, they're somewhere. But that's the mild cognitive impairment. And of course, once we get there, we're starting to see some of the signs, those things, and they tend to get worse as time goes on if you don't do something about it. And that's the problem. And the bad part is, they say by 2050, which is not that far away.
Now, Alzheimer's, I can't say you cannot help it at all, because you can.
Well, you can,
but you're better off always trying to prevent. So everything we're talking about in the show, you're better off trying to prevent. But I have had people come in that were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and when we do their lab work and we fix their deficiencies, we give them stuff for the brain. And I've had, I can't say all by any means, but a lot of them get totally better. And it's like, oh, that's, you're surprised when they do get completely better, but it can happen. But it's not the norm, because it is normally a degenerative problem where once it starts, and once you start getting that ball rolling, it is harder to stop it.
It is. And they're telling us that by 2050, which is not that far away, right? There's projected to increase to 13 million. Plus, almost double.
Almost double, which is 20-something% of the population over 65 will actually have Alzheimer's. If there's not something changed before then.
And that's in 24 years.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, but we've seen it though. We have definitely seen it increasing over the last 30 years. So it doesn't surprise me that it's going to get even worse another 25, 30 years, because that's what we are seeing today. And it's scary.
It really is kind of scary,
It is.
And it's the 7th leading cause of death in America.
In America right now.
So in other words, from heart disease and vital down, and this is number 7 on the list, and it's probably climbing, and it's going to climb, as we see more and more.
And the costs that are associated with it are huge.
Staggering. For
one, the care, taking care of people when they can't do anything for themselves, it gets very expensive.
So what are we doing that may be speeding the process?
There's a few things. Actually, some of the risk factors.
These are just the most common risk factors. Hypertension, high blood pressure, and that's a biggie. The diabetes, and we're going to throw in there, in our opinion, the pre-diabetes, because you're doing the damage in the pre-diabetic stage. Just not quite as intense.
Some are even actually calling it type 3 diabetes, because even if you're not diabetic, it's the way the sugar damages the brain. And so there's no doubt that sugar and carbs, which is, we know, way higher than what people used to eat. It is actually damaging the brain. So it's another reason to change your diet, not just to lose weight, but being overweight is another risk factor. So if you are obese or overweight, it is another risk factor for your brain to not work as well.
And then there's the inactivity, that's that's epidemic nowadays. So there's a big deal there, because we know that just, I don't care what you do, just any kind of activity to get the blood flowing increases circulation in the brain as well as anywhere else in the body. So everybody's always talking about heart health and so on. It does as much for the brain. And so that's real important. And there's a few genetic factors kind of thrown in for fun, that kind of thing. But basically, they're not big. And so in other words, it's not just genetics that's causing this problem. And that's actually one of the last things on the list is genetics.
Although it is
a problem.
One of the problems.
But it's late. And those are things you can control. If you smoke, stop. Okay. If you got hypertension, do something. Somehow get that controlled.
Biggest thing to do is to lose weight, even if you're not overweight.
Yeah.
I have seen 10 pounds make a giant difference in blood pressure in people.
Really?
So, and now if you're way overweight, you might need more than 10 pounds, but we see 10 pounds make a difference. It really does. So we see that every day. I tell people, you lose a little weight. Well, I'm not overweight. I'm like, I don't care, get it thinner. And it does make a difference in your blood pressure.
That's a big deal. Just breaking a sweat every single day at some point.
Just increasing circulation.
Moving.
Right.
We ourselves do something that is supposed to be really good for the brain, and that's a vibration plate. A vibration plate. If you can't exercise, you get on that and stand there. And it helps your balance, and at the same time, they have actually shown that it helps lymphatic drainage, which that is the drainage from the brain to actually help clean itself out. So
it also helps your dance skills.
Yeah.
Over-the-counter medications and prescription drugs are also a big piece of this.
They are. You don't know how many people come in that are actually starting to get mental decline already, and when I look, they're on all kind of medications that make mental decline. So what I always tell them is you need to go back to your doctor and ask for alternatives, because there are always an alternative to something. And the drug, kind of over-the-counter ones that we think of, instantly, is your diphenylhydramine hydrochloride, which is...
Yeah, I was going to say, break that down.
Well, everybody calls it by the brand name Benadryl. Okay, so antihistamine.
It's an antihistamine.
Now, not all the antihistamines do it, because the Zyrtec, I don't believe, does. Not that they found so far.
Right.
So there are alternatives.
Yeah.
But people that do that for sleep, that's when you see people take it every day. Everything that says PM at the end of it, usually.
That's a
if it's an over-the-counter medication, if it says PM, it's probably got diphenylhydramine hydrochloride. My mom was the worst, and she did get dementia. And I took it away from her when they started coming out with the research, and then she'd go buy something else that was the same thing but said something different. I was like, that is the same thing, and I'd throw it in the garbage again. So
it was a challenge.
It was.
That's how they get you. They put the same medication or the same active ingredient in there and call it something
that's why I say it's called diphenylhydramine hydrochloride.
Yeah, they're what we call an anticholinergic, because choline is so important in brain health.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit, how that is one of the main things you need is choline, and the drugs that are in the class of anticholinergics block choline.
And you can just Google that.
Yes.
Anticholinergic is CHOLIN.
A lot of your older bladder drugs also are
Ditropan, those kind of things. Yeah.
So what you want to do is get online, look at your medications, make sure it is not in the classes that actually cause dementia. Now, all your benzodiazepines also, which are your Xanax and Ativan, and all your, that all just dulls the brain, really, if you think about it. So that will long-term also cause dementia. So you have to look at what you're taking. We're not saying don't take anything, and you always talk to your doctor, but there's alternatives. So that is one thing. I believe that's one reason it's on the rise so much, is because more and more people are taking more and more medications, and that does affect the brain.
And so what are some of those other over-the-counter challenges, those medications, aside from those antihistamines?
Well, the acid reducers are another thing that blocks a lot of nutrients, and nutrient depletions definitely have been linked with mental decline as well. So you got to look at if you're not absorbing your nutrients anymore, and that is going to affect the brain. So when you talk about brain health, you got to have your nutrients. And if you are going to take it, you need to make sure you do the lab work to see what you're deficient in, and you need to supplement more on those deficiencies.
Right.
And so, we recommend that's the first thing we do when somebody comes in and says, I'm having some cognitive impairment. What do I do? First thing we do is say, you need to do lab work. I mean, we got to see what you're deficient in. Some of the common nutritional deficiencies that will affect the brain is B12, folate, any of your B vitamins actually, in the B vitamin family. Iron deficiency. You don't carry oxygen to the brain anymore because it's real important for iron to carry oxygen because it helps the hemoglobin. And if you don't get the oxygen, then of course you're not going to think as well. So iron, B12, folate, magnesium, vitamin D, which we've talked about over and over and over.
It's like every single show we do.
It is. Vitamin D deficiency affects the brain as well. So that's the first thing we say is do that. And then we also on lab work look for some of the genetic things like homocysteine. Homocysteine, definitely when it's high, it damages the brain. It hardens the arteries in the brain and it is definitely linked with Alzheimer's and dementia. So we always look for that as well.
Yeah, we typically do, we've got a big panel, we call it super cardiac panel.
Yeah, that's the one you want to do for brain health.
Yeah, because it's typically looking at the things that we normally look at for cardiovascular health. But the issue is, if it's good for the brain, it's good for the heart and vice versa. So if you've got something going, so that test looks for all the stuff that's for the heart.
Right.
We look at every angle, every nook and cranny.
If it's going to affect the heart, it's also going to affect the brain.
It's going to affect the brain.
Because inflammation, horrible for the brain.
Yeah.
High cortisol, terrible for the brain. Because cortisol is your stress hormone. And when it's too high all the time, now short increases in it when it should go up is different. But when you're chronically high, they definitely have linked that with brain decline, I should say. So that's why we always start with lab work. So we know what people need and we know where to start and we know what to give them. And that's your first step. Your first step is not just to go get a memory supplement that you don't know if it even has what you're deficient in. The first thing is fix deficiencies.
First.
Yeah, you have to have that baseline.
Definitely.
I feel like I've said a few times.
A few thousand.
And then the next thing we tell people, okay, if you got all your deficiencies fixed, and what do you want to take for your brain? I mean, there's a couple things that you absolutely have to have for the brain, and that is omega-3 and choline.
And your
That's why we talk about the anticholinergics being so bad, because one of the things you absolutely want to have in the brain is choline.
Yeah, and and a lot of people say, well, where do you get this choline stuff? Well, I think about the common way to look at it is lecithin. Okay, and a lot of people come in and ask for lecithin. They've read about that. Okay, where do you get that in food? Think about an egg. For years they told everybody, for years, oh my God, if you eat an egg, you're going to die tomorrow. Oh, you poor thing, you just can't do it. And now we're seeing the ramifications of getting away from the foods that contain these kind of nutrients. For all of these years, we've had people, away from these nutrients, and now we're seeing it.
Because your brain is made of fat.
About 60 to 70%.
Yep. So if you are on a low-fat diet and you don't have the nutrients that are fats, because everything we're mentioning is kind of a fat compound, you're not going to have a good brain power. So, and you want the good fats, and we've talked about that over the years. But omega-3, I mean, it is very deficient in the American diet. People say, oh, well, I eat fish once every 2 weeks.
Fried catfish.
That is not going to do it. And then when you fry it, it destroys the omega-3 in it. So you don't want, that cannot count.
I've literally had somebody tell me just recently, I said, talk about eating fish. Oh, I eat fish. And I thought, okay, because it didn't look too so hot. So I said, what kind of fish? Well, catfish. I said, fried catfish? Yeah, I love those. I said, well, okay, that's probably not your best choice.
That's the problem.
There's a problem, that's right.
But we didn't go into, we didn't go into supplements.
Right. Other than the omega-3 and the CDP. And on the CDP, we like the the choline. The CDP choline is one of your most absorbable ways, and it crosses the brain barrier, and it is.
That's it, yeah.
And people can tell a huge difference when they take it. So, but there are a lot of other supplements out there for brain health. We always say start with that, but you can always add extra ones if you need to.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody has probably heard about ginkgo. Because that's been something that's been talked about for
years.
30, 40
decades,
years.
for sure.
Yeah, decades, literally. And it's no doubt, it's very good. And how does it work? It increases blood flow to the brain. There you go.
Now you can't do ginkgo if you're on a blood thinner. That is the group of
Yeah,
drugs you
because
cannot
it is
take
a pretty
with.
big, it is a pretty big anticoagulant
Yep.
by itself.
And we have a
really
product
is.
called Memory Core, which has your ginkgo, but some of the main ingredients are cocoa extract, which is the part of chocolate that's good for the brain.
Yeah.
It has your phosphatidylserine in it. It has bacopa in it. It's, so it's a really good combination of things for the brain health.
Yeah.
So Hershey bars aren't.
The
can't
sugar in
substitute.
it. Yeah, nope. The sugar in
Yeah,
it
that's not
probably.
gonna help.
If you could get it without the sugar, yeah, it'd be great.
Exactly.
Who wants that?
Yeah, I know.
It tastes good. It tastes very good.
It'd be pretty strong. Another one, a lot of people talk about things like mushrooms and so on, and there is a specific mushroom, and it's called lion's mane. And we have a lot of people that once they try it, they continue because they can tell a difference.
And it even helps depression. And we
It
didn't
does.
mention that as a risk factor, but depression's a risk factor. Mental health is a risk factor for brain health and Alzheimer's. Also, hearing loss. If you can't hear, you might want to do something about it because that has been linked also with brain decline. So there's a lot of things
Right.
that we didn't even mention already that do have a factor as well.
Yeah.
But lion's mane is a really good additive to the ones we talked about.
Yeah, I've been taking lion's mane and notice a considerable
Yeah,
difference.
it is.
Just in the ability to recall
Yep.
Right.
where my keys are. Like in the middle of a conversation, I
Right.
don't lose track of what, because it was getting bad there. I could be having a conversation, 20 seconds in and lose complete track of what I'm saying. And it's,
Yeah.
And keeps
That's
you from
gone.
getting
That's
sick as
gone.
much. So it's also good for the immune
Yeah.
system. So it's actually got a few benefits.
I was going
to
to
it.
say it's got more than just the
does.
brain, obviously. It's good for a lot
Yeah.
of other things too, which is really good. But one of the biggies, can't stress choline enough, really, and because it's in so many, like I say, so many foods that everybody has kind of gotten away from. Oh, I can't eat eggs because of my cholesterol. Cholesterol is so important to your brain that it can actually make cholesterol. It can't make a lot, but not a lot. Most of it's made in the liver. But it is so important to that brain function that it actually makes a small amount of cholesterol. So, we got to rethink this cholesterol thing, if we just really get crazy with it, And, things like that phosphatidylserine. I mean, it's one of those things, helps a lot with that stress hormone.
It does. It helps with the stress hormone. It helps with brain function. It is also in our memory core.
Yes.
So, and then phosphatidylcholine is another way of getting choline. I believe the CDP choline is probably better, and you see a bigger difference way faster. But it is less expensive to take phosphatidylcholine if you cannot afford the CDP choline. So you're going to get choline somewhere. So phosphatidylcholine is a way that you can get choline.
And there's even some really good research about rosemary. The herb, rosemary, the extra. There's some extracts out of it, and actually the scent.
Actually smelling it. Diffusing rosemary, they say, actually helps with brain health. And they've done some studies, and it was a pretty significant difference when people smelled rosemary.
I have a rosemary salt that I make that is just kosher salt, rosemary, sage, garlic, lemon zest.
Yeah.
And I use it on a lot of things. It just looks like green sand, but it is. I can open it. Just the smell of it is wonderful.
Right.
And we do have a supplement called cognitropin. Tropin?
Cognitropin.
Okay, that actually has the rosemary extracts in it.
Yeah.
And so it has a few other ingredients with it, but that is one of the main ones in there for helping cognitive health.
It's a rare one. You don't see a lot, but this particular company, we happen to know them very well. And what they do remarkably well. And that's one that they've really concentrated on because of the owner of the company. She's very, very into the brain health thing. So that's why she did it. And it's one of the great ones. Something else that's talked about a lot in the research now, and you've probably seen some of this, is the creatine. Now, creatine is one of those things that we use for, most of the people think about it for muscles and bodybuilding, that kind of thing. We kind of got to have it for the brain too. I mean, it actually shows that, low dose creatine, say 3 to 5 grams a day, and people can actually tell a difference. They actually will see a difference over time. So that's a biggie.
And then DHEA, which DHEA is a hormone. They call it the aging hormone because the older you get, the lower it goes. But it can help the brain function too because it's big to control inflammation. And as you age, it gets lower and lower and lower.
There's the problem. Yeah.
And so supplementing a little bit of DHEA is one of the least expensive things in our whole store.
Yeah, I've been taking that as well.
DHEA makes a difference in brain health as well.
What's really funny is, like I say, it's the cheapest thing we got in the store, I swear. 3 months for like, what, $13 or something like that, or on the average, something in that range. And the amount of people that we see with low DHEA is unbelievable.
And that is also on that panel that we mentioned earlier. If
It's
you
on
do
pretty
that
much all
for
of our
brain
bigger
health, it
panels.
will actually have the DHEA levels on there as
exactly.
well. And it is better to check it first so you know where you are.
Sure.
Oh, and real quick, I wanted to mention red light therapy is so good for brain health.
yeah.
It's another thing that we do that actually you can go to our website. We have a whole section now on red light therapy.
Yeah.
Also, at doctorsnutrition.com, you can sign up for the weekly newsletter, which comes out on Sundays, which you will know about the special before everyone else, as long as you get that newsletter. The YouTube channel, completely active channel. There's tons of information, tons of content there, so go feed your brain there on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, on the Facebook page, you can reach out to them. You can also get the newsletter on the Facebook page, and you can see content from the YouTube channel also on the Facebook page.